Welcome to the second day of the Cybersecurity and Privacy Festival. This is the Cardinal Key workshop. For those of you who don't know who I am Annie Stevens from the Stanford Information Security Office. Today we will be talking and discussing all things Cardinal Key. Before we get started, I'd like to get an idea of how many of you that have heard of this elusive Cardinal Key. Maybe you guys can just do like a thumbs up, thumbs down type thing in chat so we can get an idea. Yep, as I expect. I think most of you have heard of it. So it turns out it's not quite so elusive after all. In fact, it's actually rather simple to install and use as well. So what I'll do is I'm going to kick off this workshop by providing a background of it for those of you who have not heard of the Cardinal Key. I think this will be useful. Towards the middle of the slide deck, I like to turn it over to one or two or three of you guys who would want to share your screen, and we can walk through the installation of the Cardinal Key together, and others can follow along. I do want to mention that only Stanford folks with valid SUNET IDs would be able to take advantage of this. So let's get started at the beginning of the journey. Right, so the story began in 2012 when Michael Tranduff, the Stanford CISO and CPO, had a vision. Strong user authentication coupled with device security posture checking at the application layer for all end user devices. To start, two-factor was put into motion with a gradual campus-wide rollout. So seeing incidents as catalysts, these next few slides, you'll see some examples of major incidents that propelled the implementation of his vision. So the incident where there was a breach prompting the need for users to reset their password, right? This kind of put into motion to implement two-factor authentication. Once the decision was made to do it, it was rolled out to all account holders, faculty, staff, students, within 6 weeks, I believe. Initially, in-house systems were used for this. However, sometime in, I think, 2014, we transitioned over to Duo. In the summer of 2013, lost, stolen, unencrypted devices were our top ERM risk. And so efforts were redoubled to ensure that all computers and devices containing medical information are encrypted. And so how was this accomplished? We established a requirement to verifiably encrypt all Windows and Mac computers. I'm sure many of you guys are familiar with this. Behind this initiative, an endpoint compliance management system was developed and integrates several systems of record to create a unified view of our endpoints, right? So you guys are familiar with My Devices. It tells us who's using what device, what their affiliation is, what the device security posture is, things like that. Enforcement is done by gating campus network access, right? So users are given a 30-day grace period to get their device to be compliant. And as you might guess, the gap is that there is no enforcement for off-campus networks. So My Devices, the system, it was a high return of investment. So with My Devices in place, a big important piece of the puzzle was in place, right? It was very successful. The encryption rate was is at actually 98%. For endpoints that use the campus network. Lost and stolen unencrypted device risk dropped to one of our lowest in ERM. However, the question remains, what about those that don't? So everyone uses some sort of username and password, right? However, passwords are prone to be problematic. Why are they problematic? Let's examine some characteristics of poor authenticators. So many times people reuse the same passwords, right? Because it's easy to remember. They may use things like social security numbers or date of birth might be used. Can someone venture a response to say why date of birth or social security numbers are a bad password authenticator? Okay, so basically they're identifiers, right? They can be easily found. These kinds of information are provided to multiple entities, right? Like the DMV knows it, your employer knows it, banks know it. And so now that secret is not really secret. So this is not good, right? The same secret is provided to multiple services. It's not something that is known exclusively by the user. So this is where it falls apart. If the secret isn't a secret at all, then anyone can gain access to your information. So this prompts an understandable but kind of strange position we're in today. We can do better because we have the technology to do something other than just username and passwords. In addition, each one of us, we have multiple accounts that we need to use, we need to log into. So how do we generate uniquely complex and secure enough passwords for each system and avoid being phished? So what can we do? I'm sure many of you have multiple accounts, right? How do you keep track of multiple login information? So things like using a password manager is recommended for all your online accounts. But with Cardinal Key, we are taking a step further and replacing passwords with something much stronger. So as you guys might be familiar, we have cardinalkey.stanford.edu. So why are we doing this? Cardinal Key provides stronger authentication. It protects against phishing. It provides device identification, and hopefully the user experience is enhanced due to not needing to type in password all the time. Because really, does anybody enjoy carpal tunnel syndrome? Probably not. So some areas where the Cardinal Key can be used, currently we use it to log into the VPN and log into applications that support web SSO. Soon to be coming soon, we will be able to connect to secure wireless. So to kind of go over, when you log into the VPN using your username, password, and two-step, there's several steps, right? First, you open up your Cisco AnyConnect and you would hit connect. Then you might be prompted to put in your username and password. You say okay. And then you would be prompted for your two-step. And then at that point, you click continue, and then you accept, and then you're connected, right? So it's like 4 steps or so. With the Cardinal Key, right, you open up the Cisco AnyConnect and you say connect, and you would be connected. It's really that fast, that easy. Similarly, with web logins, you would go to the web application and you would have to type in your username and password and maybe prompt for two-step, and then you would be logged in. Similarly, with the Cardinal Key, you go to the website and you might be prompted with two-step as well, and then you would be logged in. So you're minus a step or two. So with something so exciting, how was it rolled out? Well, it took a span of 3 years, but it was broken down into 3 phases. It began with setting up the infrastructure to support opt-in participation. And then based on the use and feedback, the user experience was improved, and then we aim to garner broader adoption, right? Right now, we're in the third phase where we're starting to require the use of Cardinal Key for central services. So for those of you in UIT, you know that the use of Cardinal Key is required to access things like webmail and Google Docs. So getting a Cardinal Key is quick and easy. You can see here, these are roughly the steps that you would go through to obtain one. You would open up a web browser, go to cardinalkey.stanford.edu. You would have to provide your web login, your username, password, two-step, and then you would click on the install, and then the key would be installed onto your client. So I'd like to pause here for a bit and see who might be interested or who want to volunteer to share your screen so that the rest of us can follow along. We'll walk through a installation together if that's of interest to folks. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. Is anybody interested in walking through an installation? Nobody wants to volunteer? Okay.
Linda said she's happy to share.
Okay. Linda, do you want to share your screen? Cool. So Linda, what you'll want to do is you'll go to a browser that you might typically use, right? And then you'll go to Get Cardinal Key. You can type in getcardinalkey.stanford.edu. So in the URL browser field, you can type in, so Linda, if you want to just scroll down a little bit then on step. So you can go ahead and click on the Get Cardinal, step 1, getcardinalkey.stanford.edu. There you go. And then you'll have to accept the two-step authentication. Okay, and this is the device name. You can leave it as is and say continue. And then we're going to go ahead and download for Mac 10.7 and newer. So click on that. And you're going to say you're going to keep. And then open it up when it's ready. And then you're going to say continue and install. So this is the password that you use to log into your machine.
I'm sorry, I think that's the right password.
Okay, so not your student ID, right? This is the password you log into your device.
Yes, that's what it was. I thought maybe we should use someone else as an example.
Okay, all right.
Sorry.
No
Thank
worries.
you.
Sure. Does anybody else want to volunteer? Well, Linda, you're gonna have to,
Stop share.
yeah, thanks. All right, Josephine, you want to share your screen then? All right, so you've gone to this page and then you click on download for Mac and newer. And you can open that thing you downloaded up. So below you'll click on the thing you just downloaded. Or if you were to open up your downloads folder.
So I did open the download, but I'm not sure why it's not showing up. Right now on my screen, it says it's verified.
Oh, okay. So
Is that not what you see on my screen?
no, we only see the download for Mac 10.7 thing.
Oh, I already downloaded it and I opened the Cardinal mobile config
Okay, cool.
and I installed it.
And so then it was installed then?
Yeah, so I went a step past what Linda had when she was sharing her screen. So I entered the password.
Okay, cool. Yeah, you're probably only sharing like the browser window, but that's okay. So it sounds like you were able to get it installed. Because so now if you were to go back to the browser window
Okay.
and click on and go to, so what you'll need to do now that it's on your machine, for you to use it for web authentication, you need to set the cookie in your browser. So you'll need to go, so up at the URL where it says onboard.cloudpath. If you go to login.stanford.edu /cookie, / is the other way. Yeah. /x509. Yep, and hit enter. So see how it says disabled, we will hit enable the Cardinal Key authentication. So now it's enabled. This means that it's set and ready for you to use to log in. We can do a quick test. We have a test page. It's called Cardinal Key -test .stanford.edu. So basically, it's you're testing the login of it, and let's see what it does. Okay, that's a good thing. So we want to see this message that the Cardinal Key is working. So now, if you were to go to like access.stanford.edu or webmail, then you would be able to just log in without having to provide your student ID and password. So that's just to show you how you might get a Cardinal Key. So at this point, yeah, I think you're good to go.
So if I wanted to do this on my cell phone, I saw that mobile was an option. Do I have to redo this?
Yeah, so for every device, so like on your mobile phone, you would also need to, use the browser on your phone and go to getcardinalkey.stanford.edu. And then, you would go through the same steps that you did for your, what we did here. You also need to enable the cookie on the browser as well.
Okay, so I would do the same thing, but then use my phone doing it?
Yep.
Okay.
That's right. Yeah, so for every device you use, so if you have 2 laptops, then you would need to do it for the same steps for both. If you have multiple browsers on the machine, so like let's say you use Chrome and you use Safari, then you would need to enable, you just need to enable the cookie, the X509 cookie on each browser. Does that make sense?
Yes, I think so. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. So what that means is when you set the cookie, so if you clear cookies in your browser, then then at some point, if you want to use the cardinal key, you would have to re-enable it again. So that also means if you're in incognito, then you would have to enable that cookie every single time. Okay. So I think, does anybody else want to have any questions or want to walk through it?
Hi, Annie, it's Stacy. Sorry, I've been jumping back and forth between sessions. Did you mention the Cardinal Key test link?
I did. I think Josephine tried out the Cardinal Key -test link.
I'll just put that in chat so everybody has that.
Cool. All right, so I think what I'll do is I'll jump back to my set of slides, and I'll continue with the rest of the slides. And then at the end, if anybody has any other questions, we can, obviously discuss further. Okay, so let's see here. Share screen. PowerPoint share. All right, so let's see here. We can start. Whoops. All right. All right, so we went through a couple examples of installation. So I think we did, both of the people that tried it were on Macs, I believe. So on a Mac, if you were to open up your keychain in the section called My Certificates, you would see something that looks like your student ID /enrollment and a bunch of letters and numbers. If you were to open that up, you would see information about your key. So a Cardinal Key really is just a certificate file that resides on your device. Some of the important pieces of information that it provides are the CN, or the common name. So everybody's would be, your student ID /enrollment and then string of letters and numbers. So this identifies the user and the device. Everybody's Cardinal Key is valid for a period of 5 years. This was chosen just because, typically the lifetime of a device is 5 years, give or take, right? And so the idea is if you need to replace your device, then, you replace your device and then get a new Cardinal Key at that time as well. Okay, so I guess the question is, why would someone want to use the Cardinal Key? So incentives of the key include things like, simplified logins, and that it protects against credential phishing. The requirements is that you would need to have an endpoint agent on your machine. So that's like big fix, right? And your device needs to meet our cybersecurity standards. So it's encrypted, it's up to date with its security patches, etc. So one thing that we know is that, often security doesn't really work, even when the benefits are compelling, even when there are benefits, right? So one of the information security goals that we have is to automate standards enforcements wherever possible. So that being said, we didn't have an automated way per se, and so we needed to gain adoption, if you will. So we utilized a soft rollout at first, right? Remember back, I think it was phase 2, where we were trying to garner adoption and just to see how we would do based on the soft rollout. We did things like promoting the Cardinal Key on historical login pages, right? So we had little blurbs about going password and skip this login page with Cardinal Key, learn more type of thing. We kept track of the usage. So my colleague Stacy created a cool little Splunk dashboard to help us measure, how many people were using the Cardinal Key. I'd say during this phase of adoption, soft rollout, we saw the usage grow organically. And so it's just interesting to see the numbers at that point. So some lessons learned along the way was that most of the time consumed was for design decisions. Even though my devices was really successful, it was still resource intensive to build. Right now, I believe there's platforms available for doing the things that my devices is doing. User experience improvements have a powerful impact. We know that branding is important and that often security doesn't really work. So we have a cool little branding, if you will, that we created little flyers to pass out. And I always like to joke that these were, so these were a little bit expensive to make. And I always like to joke that if you guys ever find them on the ground or something, just pick it up, wipe it off and send it back our way, just because, they're pretty hardy. So some resources that you guys can peruse on your free time. We have cardinalkey.stanford.edu, my devices, two-step, encrypt, risk class, and MinSec. Supported platforms for Cardinal Key include typically, so Mac and Windows and iOS. Many of the commonly used browsers are supported. So, Chrome, Safari, Microsoft Edge, Firefox. So this is listed on cardinalkey.stanford.edu. To gain adoption, we also send out many newsletters to promote it. You guys might have seen things like this sent out. So maybe you guys are wondering how it works. What is going on behind the scenes? So to kind of give you an idea, basically, so in the beginning, we had whiteboards filled with design schematics. We knew that user mapping was established during a certificate fetch, but we couldn't trust the user submitted information. So we knew that CloudPath, which is the SaaS provider we use to issue the certificates, it knows that a device has fetched the certificate, but we don't know which device it was. So things like, which device ID to use were also question marks. So, at some point we know the device has an agent, right? It has BigFix maybe, but how does it know to talk to how does it know what to say, right? So we need to get a way for the agent to let my devices know that Cardinal Key is on this device. So once we got that figured out, when you go to My Devices and click on your computer or your phone, when you click on it, there is Cardinal Key information listed in your device. It's not instantaneous. So I would say after a few hours, you would see this information provided in My Devices. So Cardinal Key is based on public key cryptography. It relies on digital signature technology that was invented more than 40 years ago. Basically, it uses an encryption scheme that that uses pairs of keys. You guys may have heard of asymmetric cryptography, which is using a set of public and private keys to encrypt and decrypt, right? So anybody can encrypt a message with the public key because it's public, right? And only the person that holds the secret key pair would be able to decrypt it. So the security depends on the secrecy of the private key. So I think we looked at this a little bit earlier, but this is the certificate file. Digital certificates basically include the credentials that bind the identity of the certificate owner to the pair of the encryption keys, public and private. So this slide basically breaks down what happens when you log in with the Cardinal Key. So when you log in, you're presenting the Cardinal Key or the certificate to the server, for example. The server generates a random string and encrypts it with your public key from the Cardinal Key, from the certificate, and it sends it back to you. And because you're the owner, you would have the private key, right? And so you're able to decrypt it and send the random challenge back to the server, which will then verify the match and logs you in. And of course, this happens really quickly, right? You don't notice that these steps happening when you're logging in. Furthermore, behind the scenes, so I mentioned CloudPath is the SaaS provider that generates the Cardinal keys for the user. So when we go to getcardinalkey.stanford.edu, right, we put in the device name, and what it does is it generates the certificate, and then you're able to download it onto your device. There's a thing called Cert Cache, which is what is used to send device posture updates to my devices, and also get information from CloudPath about what's being downloaded and so forth. There's also periodic two-factor authentication happening. So this reestablishes the user certificate mapping and protects against cert compromise. So conceptually, this is what we're doing, right? So there's user and device certificate. The certificate identifies the device, but does not convey the posture status of the device. That's obtained through, Cert Cache in my devices. And then there's also certificate revocation list lookup. So that means, if someone was to revoke your certificate, it needs to check to make sure that the key is still valid, or maybe it's not valid. So to get this all started, we needed to be able to have, we wanted to be able to issue or generate our own certificates, right? So it took about a year in the making. We created test and production CA key pairs. CAs are certificate authorities, right? They were created via a key ceremony. If anyone's interested in what that entails, I can send you a sanitized version of our instructions. Basically, it was a group of folks. They had to meet in an undisclosed location. The recording was done to keep track of the list of things that they did. They used new unopened devices like the Raspberry Pi, a standard keyboard monitor with no networking capabilities. The keys were generated with OpenSSL. The people in the ceremony could not bring in other computing devices, and they followed a 10-page rehearsed step-by-step instructions to generate these keys. It took 7 people about 10 minutes or 10 hours, to create these keys. So the key ceremony, so there were a group of 7, but there were key masters. These are the people who were going to be protecting the secrecy of the private key for the root CA. So what was done is that we didn't want just one person holding all the keys, right? So we did a thing called MFN key splitting. MFN. So what that means is that any 3 of the 4 key masters are required to reconstitute and decrypt the keys if needed. So I guess in other words, let's say there's something, so 4 people have a portion of access to the keys. So 4 is N. And then so we need 3 of those 4 people combined to unlock the key, right? So 3 is the M. So this ensures that not just one person can have access to the entire key itself. Hopefully I explained that okay. So let's see here. Kind of just to break it down, any combination of the four people, any combination of the three out of the four people can unlock the private key. Okay, so I talked a little bit about the Cert Cache. It's a transactional high availability MySQL database. It maps the cert CN to the device and cert status. So this is, quick lookups for the user device. So in a typical public key infrastructure scheme, the certificate issuer is a CA, a certificate authority. This is usually a company that charges customers to issue certificates for them. But because we had decided to create our own CA hierarchy, we didn't need to trust any other systems. So this would authenticate the user and device. So we created the root CA and also the intermediate CA to generate and issue the Cardinal keys. So this is the root CA. It's very similar structure to what we saw earlier with the Cardinal keys. This is the intermediate CA, which is the one that's issuing your Cardinal keys. So this is the cloud path is the SaaS certificate issuing system. The intermediate CA is stored on it and used to generate the certificates. So if you can imagine, it's so that one is up in the cloud. Okay, so some key design decision summaries. Basically, we had a campus-wide two-factor authentication rollout. My devices needed to be built. Device-specific user certificates were, put in place. 5-year validity times. We had to create a cert hierarchy. In order to do that, we had a key ceremony to create the CAs. We had to have some kind of cloud cert issuing service. We had to create a Cert Cache infrastructure in order to map the certs devices in my device. Mapping of certs to devices in my devices. So as you can see, all these pieces came together over a span of some years. So it wasn't just overnight that this came to fruition. And what is nice is that here we are today. So there you have it, the Cardinal Key journey. And so for those of you at Stanford, if you haven't already, I'd encourage you to check it out. So it's Cardinal Key at cardinalkey.stanford.edu. And I think we still have some time if you guys wanted to stick around, you have questions, or if you need help installing it, things like that. Oh, and before I forget, don't forget to tune in to our other workshop today at 2 o'clock. It's Noah's leading the talk on top steps for securing workloads in the public cloud. Okay, thank you.